In this WrestleTalk news, Backstage politics forced changes to Forbidden Door, TK comments on all the injuries in AEW right now. Hey, there's another injury in AEW right now too. My review of SmackDown and more. Subscribe and enable notifications to always on for daily wrestling news videos.
Support WrestleTalk!
It's Forbidden Door tomorrow, and the landscape of the show is looking very different from how it was originally intended due to the sheer number of injuries plaguing AEW right now. But on the pre-Forbidden Door media call, Tony Khan also commented on the fact that Backstage politics also had a role to play in deciding the final card of the show. Speaking on Andrade El Idolo vs Rey Fenix, which took place on Rampage last night, Khan said, "It's a pay-per-view quality match, but because of the politics of pro wrestling, it didn't make sense in the pay-per-view necessarily." But that's okay. It had previously been reported that the Mexican talent associated with AAA wouldn't be able to compete at Forbidden Door due to New Japan's working relationship with CMLL, and with CMLL's rivalry with AAA going back decades, which this is seemingly Khan's admission of. Khan also spoke on the difficulties of booking the build to Forbidden Door, receiving the list of when various talent would be available after Double or Nothing, and realizing some talent such as Okada and Zack Sabre Jr. wouldn't be available until the week before Forbidden Door. But he also mentioned that the stress gave way to excitement when he realized talents like Tanahashi would be on AEW programming. Speaking of the scrapped plans, Khan said that it was very different and it could have been really cool. Are you implying this card isn't cool, Tony? Make sure to check out the Forbidden Door live reactions tomorrow night with myself and Luke Owen. It's sure to be a grand old time. Someone who's not having a grand old time right now, though, is Jungle Boy, who is reportedly injured, according to Dave Meltzer, which is actually kind of ridiculous because of how many injuries AEW has right now. Kyle O'Reilly, CM Punk, Red Velvet, Bryan Danielson, Anthony Bowens, The Bunny, Kenny Omega, Buddy Matthews, Sky Blue, Darius Martin. I'm probably forgetting some too. A speedy recovery to all. Over to WWE now, and the Backstage WWE landscape continues to be a bit weird with all the investigating going on. Vince McMahon stepping down as CEO and chairman and being replaced by Stephanie McMahon. PW Insider are reporting a bit more about Stephanie's interim role, noting that Stephanie had an all-hands-on-deck meeting on Thursday and told the people in attendance that she loves her father and that she loves WWE and will be doing everything she can for the company in the days ahead. They also noted that Stephanie was actively involved in meetings that would have normally involved Vince, which, yeah, that's what you'd expect with Stephanie taking over Vince's role, right? And now it's time for my review of SmackDown in about 5 minutes.
Visit WrestleShop.com every day for the most stupendous in wrestling merchandise. WrestleShop.com, wrestling merch for grown-ups.
This show began with a hefty recap of Brock Lesnar's return from last week. I'm really looking forward to seeing their next installment of their story this week. Their SummerSlam Last Man Standing match was billed as being a rivalry 7 years in the making, and I just don't have the energy to pick that apart right now, but rest assured, it's very stupid. Drew McIntyre began this show with a promo saying that Roman Reigns keeps ducking him for title challenges, despite him literally not challenging Roman yet. He said he'll need to win the Money in the Bank instead, even though he already said he's going to challenge Reigns at Clash at the Castle. I can't wait to see how Roman will react to that on this episode. Sheamus interrupted and said Drew doesn't belong or whatever, which brought out Adam Pearce and Paul Heyman, where Pearce revealed that Heyman had used his influence with the higher management, and now Sheamus and Drew had been taken out of the Money in the Bank match, but they could re-qualify if they team together and beat the Usos tonight. How will they coexist? This was a fine, if quite long, opening promo. It did what it needed to. We then had another Money in the Bank qualifier in Shinsuke Nakamura versus Sami Zayn, and I will pretty much always love watching these two guys wrestle. They began at a fast pace and kept it up throughout. Early on, Sami went for his trademark count-out victory, establishing it as a valid way to win and qualify for the Money in the Bank. Sami's Michinoku drivers, by the way, might be my favorite thing. Look at the angle. Crikey. They got given some time and had some nice near falls towards the end, with an illegal pin getting picked up by the ref. Shinsuke hit a Kinshasa on Sami on the outside, and instead of going for the count-out win, which was established as a valid way to win earlier, Shinsuke tried to get Sami back in the ring, and when Shinsuke got back in the ring, Sami miraculously recovered from his Kinshasa and hit a haluva kick for the win. It was a slightly odd finish, which is a shame, as this was a pretty banging match. Still though, a thumbs up overall. They announced a New Day versus Jinder Mahal and Shanky rematch next, which I don't think a single person actually wants to see. Oh, they they said exactly that in a New Day promo, that no one wants to watch it again. Huh. But then the New Day also said that they don't engage in rematch after rematch after rematch because it doesn't make sense. Except they just did that with the Brawling Brutes feud. WWE is trying to piss me off, aren't they? Instead, they say that everyone wants to see Shanky dance, which is the bit they stopped being accurate. So Shanky danced, I think him and Jinder split up. Maybe. And then the Viking Raiders came back with new face paint and as heels. They beat up the New Day and Shanky in a pretty cool beatdown, which was nice. Doesn't make sense with the video promos leading into the return, but that's fine, I guess. Sonya Deville accosted Adam Pearce backstage and asked what his excuse was for the way he was treating the women's division right now. Huh. Is WWE actually becoming self-aware? For once, like they know? Maybe? Pearce then made a handicap match of Deville versus Raquel Rodriguez and Lacey Evans because he's a babyface. And in the match, Deville was also joined by Xia Li and Shayna Baszler because they just don't know how to book Deville unless she has two random lackeys with her. Vega and Carmella, Baszler and Natalya, now Baszler and Lee. And of course, her backup was really effective because she lost this match to Lacey Evans, and then the three of them couldn't stand tall against Rodriguez and Evans after the match in a beatdown too. Good job, everyone. The Street Profits were backstage and they passed Los Lotharios, Drew Gulak, and Madcap Moss, and Angelo Dawkins made a joke. I don't know why this was here. Natalya then came out to the ring dressed as Ronda Rousey and said that she's a mum or something. Boo! She's a mum! Ronda then came out, and while she's still not very good at talking, this was one of her better promos where she just ripped into Natalya for some reason, saying she didn't recognize her unless she had her rack out, that she wasn't going to mutilate her body chasing beauty standards. Okay, and that the closest Natalya has been to a star was dressing as Ronda. Jesus, Ronda, that kind of came out of nowhere. They had an awkward brawl where the stroller that Natalya brought out was tug-of-war between them a bit, and then Natalya left. Okie dokie. Walter faced Ricochet next, where they've changed Walter's music again. I don't know if it's better or worse. I'll need to listen to it again. This was a pretty decent match where Walter won fairly decisively with a great-looking dropkick and a powerbomb. He's great. Sami Zayn backstage assured Paul Heyman he'd never cash in on Roman Reigns, he'd cash in on Brock Lesnar, implying Lesnar would beat Reigns, so Heyman wasn't very happy. I can't wait to see how Lesnar and Reigns will react to that on this episode. Shotzi faced Tamina in a Money in the Bank qualifier who replaced Aaliyah, who was apparently injured, because there were just hundreds of injuries right now in wrestling. Shotzi won, and the commentary put over that her finisher is called the Never Wake Up, something that we didn't know despite her debuting months ago. The Viking Raiders cut a promo. Max Dupree is still not debuting his Maximum Male models because there weren't the appropriate backstage accoutrements. They still don't know what they're doing with them, do they? Pat McAfee then just starts talking on the commentary desk. Was this planned into the show? Was this not planned as an in-ring segment? Was this kayfabe off the cuff? What's going on? McAfee called out Corbin for a match at SummerSlam, which I'm sure should be fine. And the main event was Drew McIntyre and Sheamus versus the Usos in the How Will They Coexist match. Now look, this is a bad matchup. It's very close to being a good story. Like, we mock the How Will They Coexist stuff, but it can genuinely work. If they were facing a lesser tag team who they were clearly better than as single stars, them not getting along is the equalizer. But when they're facing the undisputed tag champs, they should already be losing that match because they're an inferior tag team to the well-oiled machine that is the Usos. Them not getting along is an even further peg down, which makes them winning make your tag champions look not very good. And wouldn't you know it, they won, and the tag champs didn't look very good. Because as it turns out, the Usos aren't actually very good champions, in storyline of course. Also, the Street Profits were kind of obnoxious on commentary here. There was just a lot of shouting, which I'm not really about. Sheamus and Drew made it back into Money in the Bank, which is where we were when we started this episode. Yay! It was a fun enough match though, I just think the premise of it was off. That was the show, and it was better than SmackDown has been lately. Not great by any means, but there were some noteworthy things and some fun matches peppered throughout. Not having Lesnar or Reigns though is a big negative. I know they're both part-timers, but they should really be trying to further that story. And I think they've done pretty much exactly what they did for their WrestleMania build, where they just announce the match and go, yep, we are done here. Everyone get excited. The match is happening. Rather than actually trying to build anticipation and more excitement through a story. Regardless, it's a 3 out of 5 show. It's fine. There's no Rampage review from Tempest, don't worry, he'll be back next week, but today it'll be me and Sullivan Bo Brown on the WrestleTalk podcast channel going over SmackDown and Rampage, so be sure to check that out later today.
In this WrestleTalk news, Kenny Omega shoots on Will Ospreay, AEW Injuries force more changes to Forbidden Door, and Triple H is back with more power. So subscribe and enable notifications to Always On for daily wrestling news videos.